Hi everyone, I'm Les.
And I'm Ashley.
And you're listening to Anthropological, where we explore some of your favorite anthropology topics.
Hi everyone, we're here today with Dr. Mario Novak, Research Associate for the Institute for Anthropological Research. We're here discussing his article, Genome-Wide Analysis of Nearly All the Victims of a 6,200-Year-Old Massacre. Thank you, Dr. Novak, or Mario, for joining us today.
Thank you for inviting me.
So, this article, very, very interesting. I wanted to know if you could give us a little description of what led you to this particular location and how this archaeological site was found.
Do you want a short version or the longer one?
Let's go ahead and go for a short version.
So
for now,
first, I would just like to correct you. You said my paper. It's not my paper because this was a paper co-authored by maybe dozen co-authors. So it was a joint project of several institutions and scientists from Austria, Croatia, and the United States. So I cannot say that I was the first author, but definitely this wasn't just my paper. It was a joint study. To tell you something about the introduction about the site itself, basically, to be honest, we found this site by pure accident. We were lucky enough. Everything happened. It was almost 15 years ago in summer 2007 in eastern part of Croatia. During the summer, there were some heavy rains and a lot of mudslides. At the region, the archaeological team of University of Zagreb was doing a field survey, and they were called by one local villager from the nearby village. The guy was excavating, digging foundations for his garage, and he said that he found some human remains. So the colleagues from the University of Zagreb went there to see what's happening, and what they found was let's say a small pit. Slightly 1 meter in diameter and 1.5 meters deep, containing numerous skeletal human remains. They were all commingled, fragmented, and they first thought when they saw this basically these individuals weren't buried properly, but they were just thrown in. So when the colleagues archaeologists first started excavating this feature, they thought these were probably, and the skeletons were quite nicely preserved. So first they thought this had to be the remains of the victims of the Second World War or the 90s war in Croatia. But they didn't find any, let's say, modern remains, something like bullets or anything that would indicate that would confirm this hypothesis. So they took a couple of samples from the top of the pit, from the middle of the pit of human bones, and from the bottom of the pit for radiocarbon dating, to get the exact date when this incident occurred, this event, and we were quite surprised when we received the radiocarbon dates. All three radiocarbon dates were almost exact, and they showed that this event occurred about 6,200 years ago, to 4,200 BCE. And this is the period of the early Copper Age or Chalcolithic period in Croatia, so-called Lasinja culture. So this was definitely a huge surprise for us. So when the archaeologists finally excavated this pit, we received at my institute, we received the skeletal remains, and we proceeded as usual, per usual criteria and methods, sexing, aging, and so on. And what also surprised us, we also wanted to check whether these individuals had any dental fillings or any dental work that was done that could maybe suggest that they were indeed the victims of some modern let's say crimes, but nothing that there weren't any dental fillings or anything that would suggest that these were really indeed the victims of some modern crime. When we started the analysis, what surprised us, a lot of these individuals had numerous injuries on their skulls, especially on the back of the skull. And in a couple of cases, these individuals had very circular holes on the back of the head that we thought were typical gunshot wounds to the back of the head. But then in the meantime, we received these radiocarbon dates. They definitely said that they said that these were prehistoric individuals. Obviously, they didn't have gunpowder over 6,000 years ago, so these weren't gunshots. So we looked closely to these skeletons, and we saw that we managed to see that we managed to I'm sorry. We managed to decide that there were over 40 individuals in this assemblage. Basically, the youngest one was about 2 years of age. The oldest one was 50 years of age. About half of them were children under 18 years of age, and approximately similar number of males and females. And about 1/3 of these individuals had these so-called perimortem injuries, meaning injuries occurring at the time of death that are associated with the manner of death. So basically, these were the direct cause of death. And most of these individuals, 14 individuals, died by the blow to the back of the head. So the position by the blow of the back to the head usually suggests some kind of execution. Because when you this is not hypothesis, but was confirmed by numerous bioarchaeological but also forensic studies. If you see most of the injuries located on the front of the head, in the facial region, or on the forehead, or in the forearms, these are so-called defensive wounds. If you're fighting face to face with somebody, you try to defend yourself, and you get most of the wounds to the facial region. But these individuals were all had the injuries to the back of the head. So this suggests that these individuals were executed. And what also surprised us, we saw that a lot of children were also killed. So in these kind of massacres, usually adult males are killed, and children and younger women are taken either as slaves or something similar. But in this case, the people were killed indiscriminately. So we have younger women, older males, very young children, adolescents, and so on. So basically, what we had in this case was a case of prehistoric massacre. So this is a short version.
I feel like you've already answered most of my questions. That was amazing. Thank you. Yeah. So I'm actually not too familiar with the Lasina culture. Would you be able to give a little description of what that culture was like?
As I mentioned, this Lasina, so-called Lasina culture, it got name from one archaeological site in Croatia, which is maybe 50 kilometers from the site of Potocani, where these people were found. We basically don't know much about this culture. It was first defined as an archaeological culture some 50 years ago, and by now we have maybe some 50 or 100 sites in Croatia identified as such. This archaeological culture, as I've said, it belongs to early Copper Age, so it can be dated between 4,300 to 3,900 BCE. And it also spread apart from Croatia to Slovenia, southern Hungary, eastern Austria, and northern Bosnia and Herzegovina. So this is original culture. And as I've said, we don't know much about the people of this culture, these populations. We know mostly about their, let's say, everyday life from the excavations of their settlements, what they ate. We presume these people were basically semi-nomadic, because numerous zooarchaeological analysis showed that a huge majority of animal bones belong to cattle. So archaeologists also presume they followed their herds. So basically they led semi-nomadic lives, because their settlements also were not of longer, they didn't last for long. They were basically for a few months. And we didn't have any burials so far belonging to Lasina culture. So we didn't have any information basically on their biological characteristics of their general health, basically. So this case was an excellent opportunity to study their, as I said, general health. for how they lived, but also, as we'll discuss later, we used also some other analysis such as stabilizer of DNA and so on, which by which we received enormous amount of new data.
So it's mentioned in the article that the community had a diverse pool of female lineages. Is there an idea of where what cultures maybe these women had connections to?
Well, again, a very good question. The problem is, as I've said, we have some contemporaneous, we know some contemporaneous populations from the wider region of, what do you want to call it, Central Europe, Southeastern Europe. But we are talking about few hundreds kilometers or at least 100 miles of distance. So these people might have probably had some connections to the north with what's called the modern period Hungary, or probably to the west with the modern period Slovenia. So these are also Copper Age populations. But as I've said, the problem is even in Hungary we have very few, maybe 5 or 6 burials belonging to this culture. In Slovenia we have only one cave site with the remains belonging to these members of this culture. So we really still don't know much about their biological characteristics and the exact where these women came from. It is possible that they might have came from some from a larger distance, but at the moment we cannot tell.
And the pit where these remains were found, it's a pretty small pit for the number of individuals that were buried there. For the were these remains like full skeletal remains or just fragments?
No, these were full skeletal remains. First, you have to take into consideration that, as I've said, over half of the individuals were children. So obviously they are much smaller in size. Unfortunately, one portion of the pit was already destroyed by a bulldozer when they when they were digging for these foundations for the garage. So let's say approximately 1/4 of the pit was destroyed before they even contacted the archaeologists. And to answer your question, when they excavated from the photos, unfortunately during the excavation there was no bioarchaeologist or anthropologist at the site. So this definitely complicated our analysis. But based on the photo documentation, you could see the skeletons completely articulated. So these weren't just that they picked up some skeletonized bodies from somewhere from the field and thrown in the skeletons, but these were complete bodies that were thrown into the pit. So we have complete 41 complete skeleton. Unfortunately, due to the commingling and fragmentation, we were unable to re-individualize all these individuals. So we had to do a minimum number of individuals, which is a standard procedure.
Okay, so just to clarify, what you're essentially saying is that the distribution of sex, age, and that sort of thing is indicating that it's a more domestic site. Is that correct?
Well, yes. Even today, unfortunately, in modern, I wouldn't call it a warfare, but we have modern massacres in the 21st century, and when somebody gets into the village, the enemy gets into the village and they want to completely wipe out the whole community, they don't have any criteria to whom they want to kill. Basically they are killing anyone. So we presume this happened in this case as well.
Okay. And there was a part of the paper here that mentioned that this may be consistent with more of a political appeasement type massacre, something where you were marginalizing a group and then making them the scapegoat.
Yes. Well, this is you have to take into account this. We are talking about over 6,000-year-old event. So obviously there are no written records, there are no living witnesses who can tell anything about it. So in these cases, when we are talking about prehistoric events, in some cases we have to use analogies. So we may use analogies from some historic events that we have written testimonies about, but also from some ethnographic or events taking place 100 or 200 years ago. And again, we also have numerous anthropological studies and sociological studies, even from modern massacres, saying that in some cases, when we are talking about the other, I think the best example, unfortunately, when we are talking about the Nazi Germany, the Jews in the Nazi Germany were the others. So they were used as a, to appease the rest of the population, basically. When everything started in the 30s after the Crystal Night and so on. So it might be one of the possibilities, but as I've said, when we are talking about these prehistoric events, a lot of things that we are assuming that these are still hypotheses, and I presume some of these won't be ever proven, because this is just the nature of these events and sites. As I said, this is just one of the possibilities.
Right. I do think it's interesting that you mentioned the analogous distribution to some of the medieval plague sites. That was that does seem to be like a strong possibility as well. Could it have been the strikes to the back of the head were for a mercy killing or anything like that?
I don't think so, because when we are talking about the plague kills you within the matter of days. So I don't think they would kill you by the back to the head. They would struck you 4 times to the back of the head. I think this is overkill, and this is really, I don't think it's plausible. And when we are talking about plague, I don't think plague occurred so early in Europe. If I'm correct, the latest papers, I think the occurrence of plague in Central Europe about 3000 BCE. So this might be a bit too early. Of course, it might be some other disease, but when we are talking about Yersinia pestis, I think this is a bit too early.
Right. I wasn't specifically asking if it was plague, but rather whether there may have been some other disease that could have...
It might have been. Yes, of course, it might have been, but which one? Again, there are so many diseases that unfortunately we are aware, even today, with this COVID crisis and everything. But yes, it might have been. But again, this is again just a hypothesis.
Right, of course. The reason I bring that up is because it kind of links the two ideas together, that if, for example, you have a marginalized group that is more often catching a specific disease, it could possibly be that they were blamed for the disease and used as a scapegoat to appease the public opinion.
Of course, yes. This is one of the possibilities, definitely. Yes.
And it seems very relevant with today's current crisis.
Yes, unfortunately, I was asked a few months ago by one of the news reporters, what can we learn from these types of events? And I said, unfortunately, I don't think we learned much from our prehistory, even from some recent events. I don't think they say the history is the life's teacher, but I don't think that's true. We don't learn much from our past mistakes.
Contemporary history is easier to learn from most people.
That's true.
Thank you all for listening. Distribution of Anthropotamus is in collaboration with the American Anthropological Association. Please continue to follow us on Instagram and Twitter @Anthropotamus for our latest episodes, show notes, and book discussion schedule.